Hello, and welcome to the Employment Hour. I'm your host, Paul Cotillo. Our aim is to inform, motivate, and educate all of you viewers on all manners of things important to employers and employees about employment issues. I'm joined today by my co-host, Mr. Jeff Williams. Jeff, good evening.
Hi, Paul.
Good to be with you again,
Good to
sir.
be with you, too.
Very good. How are you feeling today?
Oh, wonderful.
Very good, very good. We have said many times that this is important for employees as well as employers. And today we're going to focus more on the employer with our guest, Mr. Charles Krugel. Welcome, Charles.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here, and thank you guys for having me.
Very good. We're glad to have you. You have a bachelor's degree from Bradley University. He also has a master's degree from in industrial organizational psychology from University of Northern Carolina, and also a law degree from Ohio Northern University. Am I correct?
That's right.
Very good. Okay. Let me read from your card here. You say that you're a human resources attorney and consultant in labor and employment law on behalf of management.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I represent management in labor and employment law related matters, and also do consulting on the HR end, which is basically proactive or preventive human resources. The basic concept being to prevent problems before they arise or before they get out of hand in the workplace.
This is so important to the employer.
It always saves more money on the front end to resolve these issues as opposed to the back end when they hit the courts or the regulatory agencies like the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission or the National Labor Relations Board. So it's sort of like the pay me now or pay me later proposition.
Mm-hmm. How do employers get in touch with somebody like yourself to hire somebody like you? Maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but how does that happen?
It's usually by referral. Generally, it's by referral. They know people who know me. They've heard about me, or they attend a seminar I do, or something like this. They see me on TV or on the radio, or saw me in the newspaper. Occasionally, it's by the website. I have a website too. So,
Why is business law so important to employers?
Well, it regulates. You're talking about regulating the workplace. So it's the employer. A person who runs their own business, they want to run their own business. They don't want the government or other people, a third party, telling them how to run it. And when you understand labor and employment law, you have a better chance of being able to run it your way as opposed to a third party coming in telling you how to do it. You want the government really telling you how to run your business and how to manage your employees.
Okay, but then there are rules, legal rules, that are behind all these things about business and running your own business that they must be aware of.
Yeah, we were talking about basically creating a level playing field in the workplace. So you're eliminating any discrimination, harassment, any sort of bias on the basis of race, sex, national origin, age, disability, military status, all the various types of protected classes. So basically you're looking at employees, you're hiring and treating employees on the basis of merit, their qualifications, skills, abilities, knowledge, and their ability to perform the job as opposed to who they are, as opposed to race or gender, any other protected classes.
Very good, very good. And I know we wanted to focus a little bit today on the hiring. And what kind of rules are there for employers in terms of the hiring process? What should they be aware of?
Well, obviously you can't get into issues that relate to a person's any of the protected classes. So if you have a job application or you're doing job interviews or you post a want ad, you can't focus on anything that would call attention or tend to impact against a person's race, their age, or 40 and older, which is what the Age Discrimination Employment Act prohibits discrimination against, any sort of disability, anything that prevents them from, disability preventing them from doing the job, or that would not otherwise prevent them from doing a job, military status, even to an extent arrest records, things like that. You can prohibit based on conviction for certain crimes. But basically you're talking about limiting your employee selection criteria to anything that tends to impact against the protected classes.
Mm-hmm. Do those barriers still, do people still encounter those, even though they're not supposed to be against people that are of a certain race or a certain age or whatever? Does that still kind of come into play, though, or do you think that that's, been handled?
Unfortunately, and he's kind of shy about this, but yeah, it happens. It happens. You see it happening. It's a shame. but it does happen.
But the laws are firmly in place on that. And
The laws are firmly in place. It says so in black and white. The issue becomes with enforcement. I mean, who's doing the enforcement? It always comes down to people. So again, in the workplace, you're dealing with conflict, workplace conflict, and it's not just a matter of applying the law. It's how you apply it, who's doing the application of it, how it's being handled. There's a lot of, at the grassroots level, there's a lot of diplomacy and a lot of judgment, exercising good judgment and common sense involved. So it's not just, looking at what's in black and white, but trying to make sure that these issues are resolved, trying to create a win-win situation, at least at the grassroots level.
Well, let me ask you, Chuck. We talk particularly to small employers who don't have usually anybody on staff that has anywhere near the professional qualifications to advise them on this type of employment law. If you were a small employer and you were preparing to hire for a position, what would you say are the two or three really critical things that they should observe? For example, should they have a written job description before they post for the opening? What would you say are the 2 or 3 things they need to do here to be on the safe side of the law?
Well, if it's a really small business, I mean, a written job description is always a good thing to have, but you want to make sure it's valid. So, I mean, you don't want to just write down what you think the most basic or essential functions of the job are. You need to make sure that that's real, that it's valid. It's a valid job description. You've at least pared it down to a few basic needs or essential functions, and then base the qualifications or what you're recruiting on or hiring on based on that job description. So it's a good idea to at least think analytically to some extent about it. So you're not just hiring, you're not just doing it ad hoc. So there is a little bit of analysis that needs to go into it. But you need to, figure out the logistics of the workplace itself, how that fits in case people with any sort of physical or mental disability apply, and they're able to basically do the essential functions of the job with or without an accommodation, which is what the law says. So, I mean, that is going to help, but you also want to look at, I think what comes into play a lot too is personality in the workplace. From my experience, that always seems to play into it. You want somebody that's going to fit in. And I was recently reading some studies by, it's called the Gevity Institute and Cornell University. They did some joint studies which basically indicate that personality is a key predictor of success in the workplace, how they fit in, to what's called organizational workplace culture.
Mm-hmm.
Well, does that mean then that you can be excluded from employment solely on the outcome of a personality or a psychological test?
Well, let's bifurcate that. I would look at personality, you can, but a psychological test, I mean, is the test itself valid, and is it actually needed for the job? I mean, some tests tend to impact against certain races or classes of people, genders, whatever, so you want to make sure if you're going to use a test that's valid. If you're a small business anyway, using a test may not be the most cost-effective means of hiring people anyway. But excluding them on base of personality.
I mean, are you seeing more employers requiring psychological testing to be even considered for a position? Is it more or less than maybe 10 years ago?
I'd say more than, I've seen it more than what I've seen 10 years ago, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it's significantly more or not, but I do see it more.
Now, the person on the other side of the desk, the hiring desk, what should they be concerned about, or should they be aware of these laws that impact hiring?
You mean the prospective employee?
Yes, the prospective employee.
Yeah, I think, and to be honest with you, I think most of them are. I think I think employers and employees are more sophisticated nowadays because of the internet and all the cable TV. Everybody was watching OJ, and people have a better sense of what's going on in the legal system. I think people are more sophisticated. Now, it doesn't mean that just because they know the law doesn't mean that they know how to apply it. So I still encounter a lot of situations where people misquote, misstate, misapply the law. So they say, well, you can't do this to me, and the fact of the matter is, it comes up all the time in personality.
What would you say is the most common misconception that potential employees have when they're going into job interviews?
We're going to a break here, so if we could keep this to a shorter answer, if we could.
I think in terms of the job interview itself,
the employee, as far as how the employment law applies in, what would you say is the greatest misconception people have?
Well, I think in the workplace itself is employment at will, which is the law of Illinois, and that's a doctrine based on a doctrine which says that you could fire based on for really any reason, any time without notice.
We're going to come back to that in our second segment. There's a lot to a lot of information to be had on that. You can learn more about all this on our website, www.employmenthour.com.